G'day, this is Jamie at the Church Vineyard, and I have a few things I'd like to show you about pruning. First off, before you begin, it's good to start with sharp shears. So, if you have a file and shears have a beveled side and a flat side. You only sharpen on the beveled side. So you want to get a close-up of that. You're only sharpening on this side. So I sharpen till I got a nice shiny surface, and I already sharpened this, so it'll take a little bit longer your initial time. And then I'll take one slight, I'm not sharpening, I'm just rubbing on the back to rub off any burrs that might be on the edge of the blade. And so that's sharpening the shears. The first thing you do on a vine when you're pruning is you brush out. But first, let's get some terminology down. These smooth bark, tan-colored vines, canes, branches are the ones that are fruit-bearing. This more grayish, rough bark. Sorry, didn't mean to scare you. Anyway, that bears no fruit, so it's spent. It's got to be getting rid of. So where this old cane, this old rough bark gray cane comes to the wire, at the wire or within one or two joints of the wire, you cut it off there. And then you periodically cut down the line. If you have to jerk, yank and pull on stuff, it's best to pull down or side to side. So like, pull down or side to side to yank it off rather than just pulling. Yeah, so this is where somebody got snip happy and cut the wire in half, so we had to splice it together. And that's a very good splice, by the way. It looked like we had a lot of cut happy people here. Anyway, so I like to brush out for 2 vines at a time. And by the way, I'm throwing the brush behind me because this is a cover crop row. We want to put the brush that you're pruning off in the cover crop row. I'll cut it at the wire. I'll cut at the wire. And again, I like to snip and cut more than yanking and pulling. Most of these canes you don't want more than about 3/4 of the way to the next vine anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and shorten these right now. Okay. So this side is brushed out, and
so tell us how we're choosing to brush out again.
You come up to the first joint where it hits the wire, the old rough bark wood, and you cut that off. And so this is the old rough bark wood. So right here you cut it, and then you can either cut a few every so often. Okay. So now all the old wood is off the wire. And that's brushing out. So now for a little bit more terminology. These smooth bark tan canes are again what we call canes. If you cut them back to 2 joints. For example, if this was one that I was going to cut back to 2 joints, 2 or 3 joints, that one is now called a spur. It was a cane, but now it's a spur that's been cut back to 2 or 3 joints.
2,
3.
3. Okay.
And so what you want to do is have 2 or 3 canes on each side of the vine and 1 or 2 spurs. And the spurs are always better if they're next to or below where a cane is. So for example, if this was a cane that we were going to leave, this could be a place for a spur because it's on the downside of where you've got a fruiting cane. But I would actually like to have the spurs more in this area rather than too close to the top wire. So I'm going to choose another spur rather than that one. And what I'll probably do is come down here to this one and leave this one as a spur and not leave that one because it's too high. So then, and if you just kind of pick 3 canes that are kind of going this way anyway, and 3 canes that are kind of going that way, that'll be a right choice. There may have been a more right choice, but those will be right choices. Another way of selecting, if you have 4 or 5 canes on a side that you're selecting down from, obviously ones that have a larger caliper than ones that have a skinnier caliper.
Width around?
With thickness of the cane would be more preferable than one that's skinnier, pencil size. So the other thing to look for is, I don't know if you can see it that well, but this cane has very close buds. The buds are very close together, whereas this cane here has buds that were really long in between. In the industry they call this a shade cane, and this one is a sun cane. This one was growing in the shade, so it was growing farther in between each joint to try and get to the sun. This one was already exposed to the sun when it first started growing, so they're short little joints. This one will be more fruitful, not only because it has more buds per linear foot, and so you could potentially have more fruit buds there, but anytime it was exposed to the sun, it causes hormones to establish there in the buds that they will tend to be more fruitful. You can have 2 or even 3 bunches per bud on one of these canes, whereas you might only have 1 or 2 bunches coming from this cane because it was a shade cane. That doesn't mean you can't leave shade canes as a fruiting cane. It just means if you have several on a side that you need to eliminate to get down to your 3, a shade cane could be one that you would eliminate, and you could use that for a spur possibly. So I'm going to start on this side, and I need 3 canes, and I think that these 3 right here are my best looking canes. So I'm going to keep those, and then the next thing I'm going to do is look for a spur. So we already have spurs here, so this one, since I'm not leaving it as a fruiting cane, would be really good to leave as a spur. It's on the downside where it has canes, and that's just an excellent place for a spur. So next year, spurs, the reason why you leave spurs is because that will be future fruiting canes next year. So for example, this one could be cut right here next year, and then you'd have some canes and a spur you could leave off of this for next year's growth of fruiting canes. But so this extra stuff here I'm going to take off. So we've got 3 canes on this side already, and technically you're supposed to leave 15 to 18 buds on a cane. Those are the most productive buds. But rather than going 2, 4, 6, 8, 18 and cut, if you just come out like a little past halfway, that's probably pretty close to 15 to 18, and then you're not counting buds. So this one here, again, we'll take it and, okay, so this one, it cracked, but it's not severed, so I'm going to do some doctor work on it. I'm going to tie it up. And then it'll still be a viable cane. So if it's cracked but not severed, it can still callus over and heal and be a viable cane.
We're at 11 minutes.
There's a gospel analogy in there someplace. So again, this one here, I'm going to take it out a little past halfway and cut it. And okay, to save on time, we do essentially the same thing on this side as we did here. But what I'm going to do is now show you how to do wrapping and tying. And that's not like it's to take these canes and wrap them around the wires so that they'll hold up here. And so what we got to do is rather than just grabbing canes and throwing them up on a wire, you want to put the puzzle together. So for example, I don't want to have crossing canes, because if you have crossing canes, I need to put some more tape on this one. Okay. So you want to find the puzzle and put each cane to its own wire. And I don't want crossing branches, because if the branches are crossing, then when you come for picking, the bunches will be more tangled together, like the Walt Disney movie. Also, so I'll put this one here on the center wire. And then, if you'll notice, well, if I just put this one up here and start wrapping, look how much play there is in this cane. And that could be, you could have 20 or 30 pounds of fruit on there come summertime. So what you want to do is come from the inside out and wrap. And now look how much stronger that is, just from going from the inside out rather than the outside in. And then of course you want to put a tie on the end of each one of these. You don't say, oh, that's up there pretty good, I don't need a tie. No, you need to put a tie on every one. The exception to that is if you have one coming from this way and you can weave them in, then you don't need a tie. But otherwise you need to tie on the end of each one. You want to put it around one time and then twist it several times. If you put it around 2 or 3 wraps and then twist, then it makes it too hard to get off the next winter when you're pruning and getting off the brush from the wires when you're brushing out. So you just want it around one wrap and then twist it several times, close to the end of where it is. You don't want to tie here and here. You just want one on the end, because when these things start growing in the spring, they act like a sail and the wind will catch them and they'll come unraveled unless you have that tie on the end. Okay, so
that's the basics.
this is your brain on drugs. Any questions?